So many people wonder, why should we be interested in molecular hydrogen at all? What are the main benefits? Well, briefly, the main benefits are that hydrogen gas, having therapeutic properties, include things such as its antioxidant-like effects, its ability to modulate or regulate the inflammatory response, improves cellular function, even down at the mitochondrial level, improves our function of the mitochondria. Now, all of these sound interesting, but what do they actually mean? Well, let's back up a little bit. Okay, when we look at aging and different pathological conditions that can happen, all of these occur through various root causes, such as oxidative stress from free radicals, right? Free radicals are simply an oxidative molecule that's going to steal electrons from different parts of your cells. And when that happens, it's going to cause a lot of damage. Well, that's why we have anti, meaning against, right? Antioxidants, and that's going to help to combat that. Well, it turns out that hydrogen has selective antioxidant-like effects, because it turns out some of these oxidative molecules, some of them are good, some of them are bad. Well, hydrogen has selective antioxidant activities because it's only going to go after the bad oxidants, basically. It's going to help reduce the excessive amount of oxidation. We need oxidation. In fact, that's why we breathe oxygen, because oxygen is an oxidizer. Oxygen acts as what's called the final electron acceptor in the electron transport chain because it oxidizes everything, and that's how we get energy. Our ATP, adenosine triphosphate, that's the energy currency of the cells. So we need oxidation, but we don't want to have too much of it. And so that's where hydrogen can come into play, because it acts as a selective antioxidant to help reduce an excessive level of oxidation. The same thing is true with inflammation. If we have too much inflammation, we have swelling, we have joint pain, we have aches, we have all these problems that contribute to all sorts of issues. But we also need inflammation, right? If we get injured, if we get sick, if we, if we get burnt, we have an acute response or an immediate response where we have some inflammation. And that's very important to have the healing, to have the recovery, to have the very things that our body needs so we can get better, right? To heal. So hydrogen has unique anti-inflammatory, or better, modulates the inflammatory response so that it doesn't negate or eliminate inflammation completely, but it helps to modulate different areas. Inflammation comes from these pro-inflammatory cytokines, and some of them are good, some of them are bad, some of them can be too much. Well, they're not necessarily bad, but just they have to be regulated in a certain level, and hydrogen can regulate all of these. Okay. Now we talked about the mitochondria. Well, if going back to grade school, we learned that the mitochondria are the powerhouse of the cell, producing most of the energy, 90% of the energy of our body. And when these mitochondria start to have impaired function, then they start producing an excessive amount of free radicals. And they're not very good at producing energy anymore. And so we get fatigued easier. Of course, one of the benefits of exercise training and elite athletes is they have higher density of mitochondria in their muscles, and so they can exercise harder and they have more energy. And as we age and with various pathological conditions, then mitochondria levels tend to decrease. There's not as much, they don't function as well. Well, hydrogen has this ability to help improve the function of this impaired mitochondria. And that's going to be very, very critical when it comes to improving our ATP production. As we mentioned, that's the energy currency of the cells, right? Now, there's so many other aspects about molecular hydrogen in its ability to modulate signal transduction. So what does that mean? Well, signal transduction, as we will talk about in more detail, but just the ability for cells to communicate either with each other or inside the cell. And hydrogen can favorably modulate or regulate this entire process. So what does this mean for us, right? When we look at the clinical studies, which there are now over 140, 150 clinical studies, we're seeing that hydrogen has very interesting and promising effects on a whole bunch of different conditions. And you can go to the molecularhydrogeninstitute.org and you can review a lot of these studies and you can see them for yourselves to see how hydrogen might have some of these benefits. What are some of this research actually showing? And one other important point about hydrogen is its ability to get into the cells itself, its ability to enter, say, the mitochondria, to bypass the blood-brain barrier, because many drugs, supplements, or things, they actually can't do this very easily, and so their benefits are going to be limited directly because their bioavailability is very low. Whereas molecular hydrogen, it has no problem. It can enter the cells via simple passive diffusion, so it doesn't have to go through any protein transporters or other types of carrier molecules. So this is a general overview of molecular hydrogen. There's so many things that we could really get into, but it's just important to consider that this research is still quite new. I mean, it started back in 2007 when an article was published in Nature Medicine. That's one of the most prestigious medical journals there are, and this is a great study. I encourage you to check it out. This is an animal study, but it really initiated the I guess, is a progression and exponential growth of molecular hydrogen research. Because in this study, and I want to talk about this just a little bit, what they did is they cut the blood supply to the brain of a rat. And of course, there's no blood supply. That's going to cause a lot of brain damage. And then after a little bit after that, they let the blood go back to the brain with all that oxygen. And when that happens, that's going to cause a lot of free radical damage. It's going to damage the cells. And this is called reperfusion. So the first part, when there's no oxygen there, that's ischemia. And the next part is a reperfusion. And you can see in these images that there was a significant parts of the brain that were damaged, that there was obviously cell death that occurred. However, when hydrogen gas was administered, it essentially prevented the damage, the cell death from this stroke model, basically. Now, this is, of course, really powerful because it shows how hydrogen can act as this selective therapeutic antioxidant in this animal study. Now, there's been several clinical studies showing hydrogen has really a tremendous therapeutic potential in a whole bunch of neurological conditions and other areas. But again, you can look at the studies. Of course, we need more, but this is all very exciting because these preliminary results from the animal studies now being translatable to actual human studies showing that this small, safe molecule can exert a wide range of benefits. And it's very interesting when we consider that hydrogen as the most abundant molecule in the universe. And in a lot of ways, hydrogen, I guess you would also say it is the most abundant element for life because, of course, water has H2O, and so there's hydrogen throughout our entire systems, carbon-hydrogen bonds, hydrogen-nitrogen bonds, and now we're talking about the hydrogen molecule itself, and it also has therapeutic benefits. So hydrogen is really involved in our life at the most intimate level, and in its gaseous form, it turns out it has these therapeutic benefits for our body.